Can you hear me? Okay. You got my email? Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome.
Just added your notes to the budget tracker so that we could keep track.
Yeah, I just think that there should be some kind of time frame.
Yeah.
Because when the commissioner visited the last time, he was like, "Well, we could paint it red," and it was just like, "No, you have to do more than that," you know.
Yep.
Hey, Connie.
Oh, you're on mute, Connie. I once worked for an apartment complex that painted over all the leaks in the ceiling, and I'm just it feels like it's not an appropriate solution.
Yeah, that fence would need so much sanding in order to paint it that it would just deteriorate the fence even further. And since it's basically structurally sound, I would leave it until it falls down and then put in a new one. Probably cheaper and a better fix.
Yeah, it's the bottom is the part that's really corroded. And
Maybe we can just remove the bottom.
I talked, I suggested that I ran that by Jorge, and he said that that may be the piece that's holding the whole fence up, because you don't know what the top looked like. So
I do, because we climbed up there to see on the last art installation.
yeah,
It's
I remember climbing up there too. So I mean that could be, that's why it needs to be studied,
Yeah, it definitely needs to be studied, a closer look at it.
Yeah.
And by someone who knows what they're talking about.
Yes.
Like an engineer.
How are we doing on quorum, Carly?
Imagine that.
All right, I'm gonna mute myself for now.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, we might as well get started. 6:31. Hi, my name is Jessica Elliott, Chair of the Environment, Open Space and Parks Committee. Welcome to our committee meeting today, Thursday, February 4th. Carly, if you'd like to run through your comments.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Until further notice, all of our meetings will be conducted by video conference. Links to register to attend the video conferences for each of our committee meetings will be published on the meeting's calendar on our website. To avoid crosstalk and help the meeting run effectively, panelists and attendees are asked to keep their microphones on mute when they're not speaking. It's also helpful to utilize headphones. Those participating by phone can dial *6 to unmute. If you wish to share a question or comment, you may do so by utilizing the raise hands function. I will be monitoring to ensure that all of your hands are recognized. Those participating by phone can dial *9 to raise your hand. Committee members will be called on first and then attendees. Please keep your questions or comments brief.
Great. I will call the meeting to order at 6:33. We can do our attendance.
Okay. Collier. Elliott.
Here.
Encarnacion.
Present.
Giordano. Heredia.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Mastrada.
You're on mute, Francis.
Oh. Mastrada.
She said present, but she's on mute.
Okay. McCullough.
Present.
Quinones.
Present.
Schuler.
Present.
Wiltshire Clement.
Present.
Okay, you have quorum.
Great. I also
I just joined.
David's here. You're marked as present.
Thank
And
you.
Diane.
I'm gonna just eat something, but I'll come right back in.
Great. Yeah, as a reminder from our conversations at full board, if all committee members could have their cameras on when possible. I know Malik is balancing baby duties today, so you know, if you can't have your camera on, that's fine. But if you could, please turn it on. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Francis. Is there a second? There's a second.
Seconded.
By Jada. Jada. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Great. Xavier, our vice chair, is in the meeting as well. If we could promote him to panelist. So we'll start with our informational updates today. We have divided things up a little bit more so that we can hear from more people, but in that, if everyone could keep their informational updates brief, so that leaves time for questions, that would be great. We'll start with Randall's Island Park Alliance.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. I don't have a lot today for this meeting. We've been obviously dealing with the snowstorm and clearing out, and it's been a lot of snow, but we have the roadways and a lot of the pathways pretty much clear. So our staff's been working really hard along with our park staff to get that done this week. So that's been our main push. Aside from that, you know, we're really just starting to look to the spring and some warmer weather, hopefully. So we do have our seasonal job postings up on our website. We're shortly going to be starting to roll out some volunteer opportunities through our website, still kind of seeing how that's going to play out with COVID restrictions and what we can do. But we're going to start putting some out for registration, hopefully in the next week or two. Similarly with our public programming and events, normally at this time we'd have a calendar I could show you in terms of what we're expecting for the spring and summer. But right now, along with the Icon Stadium, right now we're just waiting to see where we are before we do that. We're hoping to have some at least modest public programming, some free tours, that sort of stuff that we can do. We're just waiting to see what capacity we can handle that at. One thing we have our Randall's Island Literary Discussion. The final two meetings are February 11th and February 25th, Helen McDonald's Vesper Flights. So we welcome everyone who would like to join to do that. It's been great and people have been enjoying it. And with just that, I'd open up if any questions anyone has.
Any questions from the committee members? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, any questions from the public? Great. Thank you, David. Looking forward to hearing about the upcoming programming.
We'll have more for you next time. I hope we'll get that to you.
Great to see you. Thank you so much. With that, we'll move to NYC Parks.
Hello, you can hear me?
Yes, Sheena.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
Hello,
hear
good
you.
evening. Good evening, everyone. So yeah, like Dave said, we've been dealing with the snow. We were working with sanitation for the last couple of days since the snow started. So we have a slow start in the district with plowing through our areas, but we're working through them. We've been working late into the evening, 8:30 every night, including tonight and tomorrow, so we can get everything clear. At the last, you sent me, I think Holly sent me an email regarding the vending, the vending locations in District 11, and one of the sites was Alice Carnegie. So I'm in speaking to Glenn and Steve. I believe Glenn said Glenn Golan, he sent you the listing of the locations. I guess they want to just know what feedback and any concerns you have with the location that was chose for District 11. And the site that was chosen was Alice Carnegie Playground. And if you have any concerns, you can send him any concerns that you have, but that was the area chose for this district. And we opened up Wagner Field on Monday, the 1st, and Thomas Jefferson should be opening up probably by the spring. It's looking good, the playground, and hopefully it's beautiful. It looks really, really nice.
It does.
And the only thing we're missing is a bathroom for the park. I think if we get that, I think we have a full park. Other than that, I'm opening up for any questions.
Great, thank you, Sheena. And when you're talking about vending, can you just describe what you are talking about a little bit more?
Oh, I thought you were, because you Carly sent me the email regarding, well, the city has opened up concessions, trucks, vending trucks. They opened up the applications for I think they received like 4,000 requests. Now this isn't set in stone as of yet, but one of the locations was that was brought up within our community, Ward 11, was Alice Carnegie. So I don't know how you may feel, the board may feel about that location, but that's, if you have any concerns about them putting a vending machine, vending truck there. It's a food truck, whatever. They didn't get specific about what type of truck that was going to be there, but it's a concession food truck because of the whole situation with the indoor eating and things. They opened up the city for vendings to come in throughout. And Alice K was chosen for the district board 11. So if you have any concerns about it being there, then we should voice our concerns now before they make any decisions of if it's going to be there. And maybe you have a different location where you think it might work better.
Okay, great, Sheena. And what date does that start?
Oh, it does. Everything is just being put together now. They haven't decided on any dates. Nothing is set in stone as of yet. But that was just a choice for this board and Alice Carnegie. I'm not quite sure if y'all would agree or disagree, but it's a 5-year stint, and it's and I guess they have revisit the situation within 5 years if they choose this site. It's not a permanent thing, but this is not permanent. It's just for 5 years. I guess to get everything back into motion from everybody losing funds over through the last year or so with the pandemic and everything.
Right.
So other
Thank
than
you
that,
for clarifying.
and I think that's about it for district. Yeah, that's about it for district 11.
Okay, great.
Any questions?
I see Diane has her hand up, and then we'll go to Malik.
So my question is, just refresh my memory. Alice Carnegie Park is located
128th Street and Lexington Avenue, between Lexington and 3rd.
Okay. And this sounds like it's in the process of being developed. Am I reading that right?
They're choosing, they received I read this on the news. They received over 4,000 applications, and for the city, throughout the city. And,
Right.
And I guess they're, in some locations, they chose different parks throughout the city. So I think Alice Carnegie was one of the locations for Community Board 11. I have some in 10, but this one was chosen for Community Board 11. So, if you have some concerns, Glenn Golan, and if you can't reach him, you can just send it to me, and then I'll, work all of the, your questions and concerns through him. But if you have a different location, you can mention that as well.
Now that I have a different location, I guess I would like to hear more details, given that it is 128 in Lexington. That's a heavy trafficked area sometimes during the day. And also there are basically only 2 sides that I can see them putting that truck, one across the street from the school and the other one across from AK houses. So, and putting it on Lexington Avenue would cause more traffic issues. I've got my public safety hat on as well. So, and the only, and I say this to the chair of this committee, is the process for the selection is something I think we should know about as well. So those are my only questions. And Sheena, I think it's, thank you for giving us the information about Glenn. I think Glenn may be the next person that should come and present on this if this is moving forward.
So far, I think they just gathering information at this point. That's what I'm hearing from it, but all I know is that they're gathering information. So it's probably not, I could probably agree with you on that. Traffic already on Lexington Avenue is very heavy. Maybe they can decide somewhere different or further down the block or a different location. So I'm not quite sure. This is just what was chosen. It wasn't chosen by me. I just received the email, and maybe a different location. Maybe I have a different area that y'all might want to see go. In my head, I'm thinking maybe Port Richards. That's, it's a bigger street, easier to maneuver. It's not so congested, but that's just, something I'm throwing out there. It's nothing set in stone. If y'all have some, just send it to me and say you would like to have this site instead of that site, and then I could proceed on with Glenn.
Great. Thank you so much, Sheena. Any questions or comments about the location? If we could send to myself, Malik, and Carly first, and we'll compile that and send it over to Parks if that's okay. Malik, did you have a question?
Yes. So my question is, Sheena, you said you have some in Community Board 10. How many do you have in 10?
So far, I think I have a fill of Randolph Square, and I believe I had actually I got another one in District 11, Marcus Garvey.
Okay, so
I got another one in Marcus. Yeah, I got Marcus Garvey, and yeah, that was I didn't see that one at first. I did actually when they first sent it, but I just reprinted it. Yeah, it's Marcus Garvey and Alice Carnegie in District 11, and I believe Saint Nick and A. Philip Randolph in District 10.
Okay, so that cancels my question, because I was gonna ask why we only permitted to one, where other boys
You can
have multiple.
you can always increase it. You can always request. It's not. This is nothing set in stone. It's just what I guess whoever is. I don't know much about it. They just let us know that these are potential sites. So if you have extras, just send me an email and say, listen, I would like to have this, that, this, whatever. And then we can see how it could work out.
That wasn't the case. I just didn't want to be deprived. That's all.
We're not into depriving the district. Of course we wouldn't do that.
So my next question, well, not really a question, more of a statement, is in actuality, that's a great spot to have it. But I mean, obviously, if they do put it over there, it should be between Lexington and 3rd, possibly like 1/4 into the block. But you also have to understand that a lot of people are going over there. Is going to be within that 128th Street area because of the fields and everything as well. So if it's a 4 or 5 year process, during the summertime or during those different events that happens in both of those parks, that could be a landmark for them to, do certain things, especially on the weekends, more so than during the weekday. And then if school opens up, then, obviously the school is right across the street. But I think it's not a bad idea to have it between 128th and between 3rd and Lexington, to have it right there in between the block, not on Lexington, on the same side as Alice Carnegie. And it's a big space on top of, like, if you're able to, park, I don't know if they're able to, will they park on the street? I mean, on the street, or would it be on the sidewalk?
No, it would probably definitely be on the. They would probably give them space
So it'd
like
be on the
other
side of
vendors. If you look at other vendors, they're parked in the street with
Okay.
the window looking onto the property. So
Right.
I'm not quite sure. Like I said, this is very new to us. And they're just saying concessions. And what I see concessions when I look at the food vendors, I look how the area is done. It could be, to me, it's a good thing that you're helping out the people that are hurting behind this pandemic that have lost money. And this will be, it could be you if you have a couple of other areas that you would like, that will probably help out as well. So if you send it to me, and then I'll pass it along.
No problem. Thank you for your presentation.
One more thing I just had. I spoke to Steve about. He said he sent the email, regarding the East River Esplanade.
Yes, yeah.
All right. And about the funding, the 284 million for the reconstruction for the East River, including the 107th Street Pier.
Yes, we heard, and we're very excited about it.
Okay, all right. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that I have my notes, and sometimes my notes get a little blurry, but it's that's in the works. So we're happy to hear about that good news too. I don't have any more information.
Please
Huh?
tell the public, Sheena. Tell the public, Sheena.
I did. I told the. I'm
No,
sorry.
you mentioned it. You
I'm
mentioned
sorry.
it, but you're not explaining.
Okay. I'm sorry. When she said okay, I thought everyone knew.
The
Okay.
public, the public.
Well, I am pleased to announce that the Parks Department is and the mayor has allocated an additional 284 million for the reconstruction of the East River Esplanade, including a new pier at 107th Street. And that is in Community Board 11. So,
Woo! Awesome. Thank you so much, Sheena. Thank you for all your advocacy on that. Debbie has a question, and then I believe we have one question from the public, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, very quickly. Hi, Sheena. Hope you're well, and thank you for everything that's going on in our park. I wanted to suggest another site, 109th Street and Port Richards Park will probably be a really good site.
Okay.
Because as that place gets activated, you have the stickball. The stickball season is there on 109th Street, so I think that I would like to propose 100 and Port Richards Park as an additional site. The question that I have is that a 5-year contract is really interesting to me because that's a lot of time, and is there going to be some type of mid-course correction, to see, evaluation to see if they're doing well, because you don't want to, get somebody for 5 years and they're not doing well, or they're not well received. And I hope that that's been considered.
I don't know all the specifics. They didn't, let us know everything, but at the way we're right now, you probably need 5 years to bounce back from this year of losing funding. So I'm probably subjected to change. I don't know. They didn't give us all of the information, and I'm sure once everything has been established, they will reach out to each community board, because all of the community boards have been invited to this, have locations within the borough of Manhattan, and actually within the 5 boroughs. So I'm going to pass it on to Glenn about Port Richards, because I think that's a great location as well. And I guess it'd see what can work in that area, what would work in that area. So I'm sure it's always probably some room for change if they struggling.
Great. Thank you so much, Debbie. We have one hand raised in the public. Crystal Glover, go ahead. Crystal?
Hi. Yes, hi. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm just very curious. This question is for New York City Parks person. When back in March, when the pandemic was here and so forth, the parks had like Cherry Tree Park, that's at 99th and 2nd Avenue. Then there's Hobbs Park between 102nd and 103rd. Was it 100? No, 103rd and 104th is Hobbs. There was a sign saying, huh?
That's on 2nd Avenue, Thunder Park.
Right, 2nd Avenue is Hobbs Park. Cherry Tree is 3rd Avenue and 99th. I was wondering, there was a sign up saying enter at your own risk. This park has not been wiped down. And even though that's months in the past, I was concerned, were those parks ever cleaned down? At one time in the beginning of the pandemic, there was a solution that they were spraying on stuff and wiping things down. You see very little of that now here, especially I'm in public housing. So we don't see anybody cleaning and spraying anything. The
We do not.
buttons, the buttons in the elevator buttons are not being sprayed, doorknobs are not being sprayed. But I was curious, even from back then, had the parks been wiped down, even though the sign said enter at your own risk, were they ever cleaned, the
No,
parks?
no, we didn't have the staffing and we still don't have the staffing. People are very, that's why we posted the signs up that way. Um, because we just don't have the funding and the staffing to do that. We still have people staff out on, is still dealing with COVID and things. You know, the parks department doesn't have a lot of funding to be able to do a lot of at this current time. Maybe in the long run, once the pandemic is over, they probably could come up with something to spraying stuff down and doing solutions. They got to come up with something that's going to be, you know, feasible for the public in order to do that.
Okay, so let me ask, so if that be the case, being that this is the last thing I'm gonna say, being that the pandemic was at its high back in that time, why weren't the parks kept closed?
They were.
I understand. Well, let me finish my question. I understand that the staff had to get in there for whatever it is that they had to do, but why weren't the parks kept closed in the event that, because the risk was so high, they didn't know a lot about COVID. And so if children are swinging on the swings and sliding on the slides and they're being exposed to the elements, why wasn't the parks kept closed?
The parks were closed. We did close down we closed down the playgrounds. So let me correct that. We closed down the playgrounds and certain elements within the parks were closed, but they kept the open spaces in large parks so people can get out and walk and have some fresh air and not be cluttered in their homes. But the playgrounds were closed. And as you know, people, you know, through our time got very frustrated. And that's why when we opened up the playgrounds, we put the signs there to make the public aware that we don't have the staffing, nor do we have the means to be able to wipe down every piece of equipment within the city of New York parks and playgrounds.
Right.
So
those playgrounds, why were those see, I don't know about that playground on 96th Street and Lexington, which is predominantly, I hate to say this, a white area. I don't know if that park was kept closed, but I know Cherry Tree was open. It was closed for a minute, but then it became open. White Park, I'm not sure because I'm not that further up, but I know that Hobbs and Cherry Tree were opened and were open for a long period of time. And so if you knew that if the city knew that they didn't have the funds to clean these areas down and you let children in there, I don't think that was good.
That's false. That's not true. We closed all of the playgrounds. When the city said close all of the playgrounds, we did for all city playgrounds. Okay, we did not discriminate against one section to the other. We did it for all of the playgrounds. We left the parks open. The parks, and Marcus Garvey is considered a park, but the playgrounds in Marcus Garvey, they were closed for public usage. Okay, so we did not keep Cherry Tree open. We did not keep Lake Hobbs open.
Yeah.
I mean, you can jump over the fence if you want to get in there, but I'm saying we did it. We locked it. We had the gates locked. That's untrue. Now, if somebody was in
thank
there,
you so much.
that's it. And if anybody have any more questions, they can email me. I'll put my email in the chat, in the group chat, and yeah, everybody can have a great night.
Great, Shana. We have 2 more questions. Diane and I were both wondering what's the status on the Richard Toussaint Park and pathway naming?
So far, we to my understanding, the commissioner is going to make an announcement sometime in June. about the next set of parks renaming. Hopefully, I'm not privy to that information as of now, but hopefully, Richard Toussaint will be inside, will be one of them, but I don't want to promise you something that I don't have no knowledge of. But that's the next set of next time that he's going to name some naming of some parks throughout the city.
Okay. Would it be worth reestablishing our commitment to the park and pathway naming both for Richard Toussaint?
That can always help. Yes,
Okay.
that can always help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And David Giordano has his hand up as well. And then we'll
Yeah,
move
I
on.
just wanted to say, in all fairness to Sheena and Parks, in many neighborhoods, people got, as she's communicated very well, people became frustrated and pop locks and went into parks on their own before they were officially opened. And then they were all opened at once. So in all fairness, I think Parks responded like we weren't sure, better to close it down and be safe. So Sheena, I commend you and Parks on that. Yes, I saw parents going in and we learned that the parks, in fact, we thought they were open and we found out they weren't officially open yet. But, people had went in and got ways to get in. So it was more of a comment than a question.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Sheena. We'll touch base with you about our reconfirming our request. And we will move on to Marcus Garvey Park. Is Jana here?
Jana is at another meeting. I do apologize. I forgot to mention she's on another meeting tonight.
Okay.
For Pelham Fritz Recreation Center, Sherry is actually out. I think she's out sick. And she'll probably be at the next meeting. She should be better by that time. But
Okay.
Just to soothe everybody, once we get established and once things get better, I'm sure we'll come up with a solution to make sure we can clean all of the parks and all of the playground equipment. But once COVID gets behind us, okay. And if anybody hasn't signed up, we for their shots, you can go online. Parks is assisting at 15 locations throughout the 5 boroughs. If you go online, Watley High School on 114th and Stanton School down on Stanton Street. For to get the COVID vaccine. Anybody 65 or over, anyone in the medical field or the safety field, they can have it. They can get vaccinated. But we are volunteering there. I'll be volunteering this Saturday. So if anybody 65 and older, if they can reach out, if they even if they send me an email, I have my Parks email with me. You can give them my email address. And if we have anything left over, I can invite them over to get the shot. And we also sign up for the second shot. Okay.
Thank you, Sheena. If you could just post your email in the chat for everyone in the attendance.
I thought I did. Is it?
I haven't seen it.
Okay. Is it? I don't know how to do it unprivately. Is it because it keeps saying something but private?
Oh, okay. You just have to change it to all panelists and attendees.
Okay. Where do I do that? I'm sorry. I'm not.
When it says to.
Okay.
Just select all panelists and attendees.
Okay. I hope I'm doing this right.
Great. Well, if not, we can do it for you. No problem. Thanks, Sheena.
Okay. Okay, great.
All right. We'll move on to Marcus Garvey Park Alliance. Connie?
Okay. In the interest of time, since I can see we're also going really long, I'll do this in 30 seconds or less.
Thank you.
I think most people are familiar. We publish these brochures and a map, and it's called Public Art Park to Park. I think we've done 5 so far. Well, we're doing it again this year. And this year we will include 4 parks in District 11. Marcus Garvey Park, Harlem Art Park, Crack is Whack, because it's been reopened and the art has been fully restored. And we're also including White Park this year. So, and then there's 2 parks, A. Philip Randolph Square and Morningside. So it will serve as a self-guided art walk, connecting the neighborhoods of Central Harlem going across to East Harlem. Wow. My biggest issue this year, this is funded from NYC and Company Foundation and the Borough President's Office. Our biggest issue this year is because everything is closed, where are we going to distribute it? So if anyone has ideas, please let me know. And that's it for me.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm sure Carly and the community board staff could circulate it in the newsletter for sure. But I'm sure Carly can reach out with additional
It's too
options.
large to put into a newsletter. It's a full-size map. When you unfold it, it is, you know.
Wow.
It's really a brochure. It needs to be handed out at live locations. We'll hit stores and places like that, but any suggestions would be helpful.
Great. Any questions from the community board? Or suggestions? Any questions from the public? All right. Thank you so much, Connie. We'll think about that. And if anyone has any suggestions, please reach out to myself or Connie.
Thanks.
Thank you. We'll move on to Friends of the East River Esplanade. Stacy?
Hi. So as Sheena said, the mayor announced $284 million for repairs to the Esplanade, which is fantastic news. Something that Friends of the East River Esplanade has been working on for the past 9 years, and all of you guys have been working on forever as well. So that's really exciting. Originally tonight, I was going to present a letter that we were writing with Civitas, talking to the mayor about the issues with the Esplanade at Pier 107. And we were building a coalition of different nonprofit partners, community boards to say, hey, you know, this needs to be addressed. Well, the mayor usurped that. Great, I'm happy about it. So now we're going to change the letter around to, you know, thank the mayor for this, for addressing the issues, for making sure that, you know, this is being recognized as a huge problem that now needs to be fixed immediately. And so now we're going to move towards building a strong coalition of our nonprofit partners, our community boards, our elected officials, whomever else it is we need to make sure that this stays on task. The timeline and the capital tracker all are put into place in a timely manner. We don't just want to hear an announcement, we want to see some action too. And you know, most importantly, we're really concerned about the safety. It's not just the aesthetics and the quality of life, it's also the safety. So the longer that, you know, the project takes, the less safe it becomes. So tonight, Jim Tripp was going to be joining me. He's not, but Diane Collier, who's also on the board of East River Esplanade, is here tonight too. So if anybody has any questions for either one of us about this, I just want to make it very, very clear that this is Parks money, not Esplanade Friends money. There was a little bit of confusion. This is not, we're not managing it. This is not fiscal. We have no fiscal responsibility for this. This is all Parks money. So we're really excited to, you know, continue to advocate to make sure that this gets done and is a really great, great addition to the community and to bring back Pier 107. So we're really excited about that.
Great. Thank you, Stacy. Any questions from the board? Committee? Any questions from the public? Great. Well, Stacy, we look forward to becoming a part of your coalition building. So keep us updated and let us know if there's anything that we can bring to the committee for additional support.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Great. And then Friends of the Harlem Art Park Alliance, Debbie.
Good evening, everyone. As someone who served on Civitas way back when and was part of that original charrette that created that concept, it's a long time coming, and it's really rewarding, and it only just goes to show how you just have to chip away at things and keep it going because Civitas has been known to take on long-term fights and battles that have proven to be very wonderful to the community. So I'm really happy for this work that has been done. So I just have, you know, things are going well at Art Park. We're excited about, you know, the efforts that have been occurring at the park in terms of folks being stationed there, the Department of Health and other city agencies. And as always, we still want to have this dialogue about what's the redesign going to look like, and we look forward to following up. And the only announcement that I have, well, two, is that three actually, sorry. One is that we've been assigned a park consultant, catalyst consultant, that's going to be working with us directly. So we had our first meeting with them, so we're really excited about that. The second thing is that building upon the recommendation from last meeting about the tree wrapping initiative, I've been talking to some of the folks, and that's moving forward. So we're happy about that. And the last one is that, you know, like I said, we put in our permits, and the next one that's coming up is in April. The first week in April, we're going to kick off National Poetry Month, and we're hoping to have some poets do poetry open mic. And then we're pushing for the Earth Day event on the 24th, and we're trying to put together a proposal to invite other groups, park groups, to celebrate Earth Day as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Debbie. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from the public? Great. Thanks, Debbie. Let us know how we can assist with the Earth Day stuff, and looking forward to seeing what y'all are doing next.
Yeah, I'm going to put together a proposal to just have folks celebrate it, and you know, that we just do our thing in East Harlem, celebrating Earth Day. So we'll take it from there.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the presentation by the Mayor's Office of Resiliency and New York City Parks regarding City One NYC resiliency effort and resiliency in East Harlem. I also want to mention that we have Matthew Washington, Deputy Borough President, and Wilfredo from Kalos's office, is Isabel from Manhattan Borough President's office, and Michelle Cruz from Ayala's office. So welcome, and please feel free to comment and raise any questions or concerns that you might have regarding this presentation at the end. And thank you for being here. Alda and Jordan, if you.
Yes, let me just share my screen. Give me a second. Great. Let me know if it's not showing up. It should be showing the front slide. So good evening, everyone. My name is Alda Chan. I'm with the New York City Parks Department. Jordan, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Hi there, Jordan Salinger, Mayor's Office of Resiliency, also joined by Carrie Grossi from the Mayor's Office of Resiliency as well.
Oh yes, and my colleague Sarah Nielsen from Parks is here as well. So thanks for having us tonight. Just a quick overview of the agenda. We are going to do a quick recap of a presentation that we actually gave to this board about a year ago. That is an overview of the 2019 Vision Plan for Resilient East Harlem. And then we also wanted to provide some updates on resiliency as Parks and the city at large has been working on it with regards to East Harlem particularly. All right, so Parks and the Mayor's Office of Resiliency led a vision planning study. A few of you may remember us being back around 2018 with some updates as we were undergoing the data collection and working with the consultant team. We also hosted a bunch of community meetings. And as I mentioned, we were here in January of 2020. The report is posted online. There's a URL on the slide, and we're happy to circulate that within the chat box as well. And we want to make sure the recommendations are fresh in everyone's mind. So we will recap some of that. We'll try to go through it quickly. But this was an effort that was funded through HUD post-Sandy disaster recovery funds. The city had a sort of general pot of planning funds and decided that we wanted to really focus some portion of that funding on looking at East Harlem, even though East Harlem wasn't hit hard by Sandy, and that was really where we got this funding. We knew that climate change is something that we needed to look at within this community. And so Parks was chosen to lead the study because we have a lot of jurisdiction of the waterfront assets here, and there are a lot of open spaces in this neighborhood. We are going to try to quickly go through these slides. I know there's been a lot of interest in this lately. If there are clarifying questions or things that are unclear, feel free to flag that maybe in the chat box, and we'll try to answer some of the bigger picture questions in the Q&A at the end. Pause here.
Got it. So thanks, Alda. Nice seeing all of you tonight. Wanted to start off by addressing an issue that's gotten some traction, obviously some press and mentions within elected officials and the broader community. There was a recent news story about a consultant deliverable that was a early work product that was part of the kind of previous to the release of the plan that has been foiled. And we are in the process of kind of sorting through that, sorting through the FOIL of request. Just want to be clear, though, that commitment of the city is clearly to transparency here. That's remained a goal, and obviously why we did such robust community engagement through the process. But just to give folks a sense of what's been requested, it was a kind of an internal deliverable produced by the consultants that was not vetted by our city family, and fundamentally resiliency is multidisciplinary, requires intense understanding of our drainage system, obviously our parks, our transportation network. And so, that work product was not vetted by those agencies.
So the catch basins.
Yes, exactly. So that said, once again, we are committed to transparency in this process, and we want to work with the community board to get those ideas and concepts released. And so within the next month or so, we'll be arranging with you a separate session to go into a little bit more detail there. As I know, this is has been a request, and that's something that we want to honor. So with that, I know we have a lot to say, but wanted to get to that at the outset.
Thanks, Jordan. So I'm going to go through and recap the recommendations that are in the vision plan. I just want to reiterate and underscore what Jordan said. We are committed to sharing the ideas and concepts that we know that folks are very interested in. A little more, they want to understand, what are the things that the consultants developed. And so we are committed to sharing and coming back and working with the community board on what that format is. And we can take more questions afterwards. I'm sure there's a lot that folks want to get through in discussion. Quick recap of the study. Overall, the study area for the vision planning process was quite large. It is more expansive than the borders of what we traditionally think of as East Harlem. We looked at the area that is essentially the Northern Manhattan watershed. As folks may know, water does not abide by jurisdictional boundaries or community board district boundaries. So we did take a broader, more expansive look, and we did also coordinate with and reach out to community boards 10 and 11, but the majority of the study did focus on what is traditionally community board 11. And what also went into some inputs that went into our study were the engagements that we did. Primarily in 2018, that was when a lot of our studying and information gathering happened. Folks who were active at that time on the community board may remember that Jordan and I were here to provide some updates. So, some traditional types of engagement like community boards, we had 2 project advisory committee meetings. Those were hosted at Dream High School, the Dream Charter School, with mostly focused on trying to gather park advocacy groups, environmental groups, social service providers, other major institutions, and trying to get an understanding from them of, what are you hearing from the folks that you serve, or, the residents that you work with in terms of spaces that are important, awareness of climate risks, what are the priorities? So that was Project Advisory Committee. We also had broader community forums that were hosted also at the Dream High School. We also did a number of mobile outreach events, mostly in the spring and fall of 2018. So we went to, I think this is the Taft NYCHA Houses Family Day, Party on Park. We tabled at a couple of fairs. And then I think less traditionally, and one thing that was, I think, more experimental about the study is that we did partner with some ninth grade, well, at the time, ninth grade students at Dream High School. And we essentially worked with them in parallel with our study and taught them about climate resiliency, but also, heard from them about, what are the things that are important to them as students who go to school in this neighborhood. And then we also incorporated them into our process. So there's a photo here of some of those students participating in, that was actually, I think, a community forum. But, we tried to make sure that students were the ones who were advocating for and speaking about this study and talking about why and how climate is relevant to them rather than just hearing from us. So those were some of the additional inputs and engagement. I won't go through all of these risks in detail, but our study did focus on 4 major climate risks, 3 of which are related to flooding, that's sea level rise, mostly related to the melting of glaciers and ice caps, storm surge, so think about events like Sandy, pretty major flood events, but then also flooding from rain events, so heavy rainstorms. We'll also touch on heat, but these are the factors that we really focused on. And then one of the things that we always want to, that we lay out in a little more detail in the vision plan, and that we always want to focus or make sure folks are cognizant of, and I know that many residents and members of the board are aware of this, is the historical context and the topography of the neighborhood. And these 2 images, one is of what Eric Sanderson's project of imagining and based on data of what Manhattan looked like in the 1600s, as well as a map of Manhattan in 1865. East Harlem is a historically low-lying neighborhood. There were a number of creeks and salt marshes here. In the 1865 map, you will see the Harlem Creek bed around 108th, 106th Street. And I'm going to point this out because we're going to come back to this. This is a low-lying neighborhood. A lot of, the historical features continue to impact the way stormwater and flooding will impact this neighborhood based on the models that we see. Also, East Harlem is a really diverse and growing neighborhood, and it's vulnerable in the face of climate change. And so that's why it's really important to do resiliency planning and to understand what the risks are. There were 2 main flood events or types of modeling that we did. The model on the left, it shows future 5-year rain event as well paired with 10-year coastal storm surge. What this actually shows is the dark blue is flooding from storm events or rainwater, and then the light blue is the coastal event. Next to this, we have an image of a future 5-year rain event with a more extreme future 100-year coastal storm surge event. So we're trying to sort of create some bookends of like, what is a storm that might happen more frequently versus a storm that would be like, future 100-year one, not necessarily once in 100 years, but less likely to happen, but in a more extreme event. The main thing that we started to see with this modeling is that regardless of how extreme the event was, the areas that are flooded, either with rainwater or with coastal storm surge type flooding, was the same. And I'm going to quickly flip back to the previous image. A lot of it has to do with the area of the historic Harlem Creek, low-lying areas that essentially go all the way into the Harlem Mirror in Central Park today. So quite extensive. And one of the major findings from this modeling and from our study is that stormwater and inland drainage issues are really the most acute and urgent flood threats in this neighborhood. And a lot of it is due to the low-lying topography of this neighborhood. And in addition, what we found is that there are these basins when we modeled the rainwater and stormwater within the community. And the low-lying basins means that, you know, when sea levels rise or there's high tide, water can start backing up in the sewers, and that causes flooding, but not just along the waterfront, but really the issue is that there may be flooding inland. And the scale of this problem is such that, you know, there is no silver bullet solution, and we're gonna reiterate this a couple of times. We really need to be looking at both central and decentralized types of green and gray infrastructure solutions, really to address a problem of this scale. Quickly addressing extreme heat. Extreme heat is also going to be an issue. As we know, climate is changing. We had a very hot summer last summer. This is a map showing the heat vulnerability index within East and Central Harlem. As you'll see, East Harlem is vulnerable to heat waves, and we do anticipate that heat waves will become more frequent. One of the reasons is that there's lower than average vegetation cover within streets and within parks in both East and Central Harlem. And so that's one thing to keep in mind. I'm not going to spend too long on the social resilience slide, but one of the other things that was unique about this study and really led by the Mayor's Office of Resiliency in a partnership with the New York University Institute of Public Knowledge was also a look into social resilience and the network of social spaces and community facilities that people go to for information, particularly before and after emergencies and extreme events. We did this before COVID, but I think this is definitely a concept that may take on new urgency in during the COVID crisis. Where are people getting information? It is a little different because people are not going as much to physical spaces, but I think the concept of social resilience is one that can be adapted to things like pandemics, which we did not consider as part of this study, but it may also be important when we talk about resilience in communities. So big picture, we did some modeling, we talked with folks, we looked at maps, and with all those inputs, what we came to last year and what is within that vision plan is a general framework for the key priorities that we see for tackling the 4 climate risks that we identified. The first and the one that we'll really emphasize is managing stormwater. Second is creating resilient public spaces. Third is adapting the waterfront. And we have a sort of diagram that shows how some of these things could work together from a street network perspective, from a waterfront perspective, and thinking about the parks network that we have. I'm not going to spend too much time on these, but big picture, again, managing stormwater is going to be really important based on the modeling that we're seeing. And when we came last year, we talked a little bit more in detail about the types of interventions. They will need to range in scale. We may need to think about things. We may need to think about the way our streets are arranged and the way they're designed, the functionality, whether it's more stormwater retention through green streets, or thinking about water storage underneath road beds, or something like pumping, which is more of a traditionally gray infrastructure type of intervention. But these are things that can work together in a system. From the Parks Department perspective, we're really going to start focusing on ways that our sites can be more absorptive. But our partners at DEP and DOT will also be really key in this. And we'll also talk a little bit about ways that NYCHA is piloting some of these ideas. Some photos of examples of what this has looked like in other cities around the world, whether it's daylighting, whether it's, having multifunctional recreational spaces. Sometimes they're not even visible. They may be underground water detention crates, things like that. The next bucket of recommendations, creating resilient public spaces, is meant to target social resilience, but also looking more at how individual sites can target extreme heat, but also the stormwater retention needs, and ways that parks in particular really have ecological benefits, but also, social benefits, and, also function as really important infrastructure. And I think this is even more apparent in a world where we are grappling with COVID, the role that parks have played in the last year in our communities. The recommendations in here have a lot to do with, how we think about parks as places that should help with mitigating heat, but also, programming, encouraging different types of multi-generational uses, and design that is, addresses a more diverse user group. It also includes thinking about designing for resiliency, in our playground designs. And we can answer more questions about this. I do want to get to question and answer. Some photos of examples of different types of what we think are, what resilient public spaces can look like on a site-by-site basis. Now, we spent a really long time talking about interior drainage. That doesn't mean that we're saying that adapting for sea level rise and coastal storm surge isn't important, but it does need to be paired with considerations of interior drainage. In the near term, we think it's important in that there are really exciting opportunities to adapt our waterfront. And by that, we mean elevating it, particularly where we, the Parks Department or other city entities that are doing esplanade repair work, which is, routine work, really starting to think differently about, the changing environment that we're in, and starting to elevate for sea level rise. The diagram that's on the screen shows it's an exaggerated profile of the waterfront elevations, but what you see and what we are trying to show is that there are areas that are a little lower lying, and so those may be areas that are more prone to flooding. And so as we continue to repair the waterfront, really prioritizing areas that are lower lying. For example, you'll see here that there's one area just across from Thomas Jefferson Park that's very high, but then there's also a lower area just north of that. Being strategic about what these elevations are in the near term. And we'll talk a little bit about how we're actually incorporating this in a lot of the projects that Parks is doing along the waterfront. In the long term, there, again, as I mentioned with interior drainage, there is no silver bullet solution for flooding along the waterfront. I do want to again emphasize that what we're seeing is more flooding from an interior drainage perspective, and just elevating the waterfront is going to present, we're going to start creating a bathtub if we don't address interior drainage. And so that's definitely one thing that we want to avoid. And there is no, one solution along the waterfront. We did look at a very long stretch, but there were a couple of key constraints that we started to identify, or things to consider. In addition to interior drainage, one of the things that we started to map, and that I have a diagram here of, is, the esplanade width it varies, but it is quite narrow. This colored map shows in red and yellow areas that are narrower, and green is where we have a little more space. So green is anywhere from 60 to over 100 feet. The widest condition we have is 112 feet up at 135th Street. There's not a lot of space along the esplanade. Just want to be clear what this shows. There's also varying jurisdictions, and we are right up next to the FDR. So there are a lot of challenges here. I think I want to also be clear that I've heard questions about, there's a lot of awareness, I think, of some of the coastal protection projects that are happening elsewhere in the city. For example, in Manhattan, in Lower Manhattan, there's the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project, which is a coastal protection project in the Lower East Side. That is a neighbor. I think that there have been questions about, like, why don't other neighborhoods like East Harlem get something like Esker? The flood risk, I want to emphasize that the flood risks that we're seeing that are different from again, interior drainage is really what we're seeing. This neighborhood is more in a tidal strait. And so where in Lower Manhattan, we see a lot of the flood risk coming from coastal storm surge, it's more exposed in the harbor. This neighborhood is not seeing that same type of flood risk. There are flood risks, and that's certainly something that needs to be addressed, but the type of intervention is going to need to really, I think, focus most on interior drainage. The other thing I wanted to just contrast with a project, one that I know a little better, which is Esker, is that when it comes to things like widths, Esker mostly centers around East River Park, which is a nearly 46-acre park that's about 300 to 400 feet wide in many places. And so that is quite different from the type of condition that we have here. So I know there are probably going to be more questions about it, but I just did want to address what I know has been a question that I've heard, why don't we have the same thing? The risks are different, and I think we want to make sure that as we're looking at resiliency projects and risks, again, we're coming up with solutions that address the problem that we're seeing, and that we are also, tailoring it to the physical conditions in the neighborhood. So again, I want to make sure that folks know that what we're seeing here is very much more an interior drainage challenge. So I then also want to move into updates about, where do we go from here now that we know what the main priorities are? Couple of, again, 3 main things that we want to move forward and do is really integrating the lessons learned here in the investments that we make in capital projects, as well as policies, continuing to engage with local stakeholders and elected officials to define what the needs are and to identify opportunities. I think one thing that I neglected to mention up front is that this was a planning effort. We didn't have clear capital implementation funding. We also weren't designing a specific capital project. I feel like I need to be clear about that. We were, trying to figure out what the problems were and where do we move from there. And we also use these recommendations to start piloting and seeking funding for projects that will then need to be designed and studied. And as an example of that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Jordan to talk a little bit about the Clinton Houses Cloudburst project.
Yes, so this is something that we're actually very excited about and kind of a direct result of the work that went into that vision plan. So as kind of part of that process, simultaneously, we applied to FEMA for their pre-disaster mitigation advanced assistance grant, specifically looking at what Alda has been, talking about at length here, the challenge from interior drainage specifically. We applied kind of in the middle of the vision planning process and learned we were awarded that grant near the end. You can see here, this is actually in Hoboken. The idea is essentially to be able to capture rainwater during kind of extreme precipitation events, both potentially at the surface through kind of a depressed Could be a basketball court, could be a soccer field, kind of another recreational facility, as well as you can see in the image there some below ground detention of rainwater. So the overall idea is, if you're going to make these investments in the drainage network, how can you do so in a way that's focused on integrating within the community and kind of existing assets, and do so harmoniously. So as I mentioned, awarded at the end of the vision plan. The work itself kicked off September of 2019. And we expect to be finished by the end of this year, 2021. You can see in the image there some geotechnical work that started, actually has just wrapped up. We have ongoing conceptual design and cost benefit analysis. Obviously this is in furtherance of a future capital project. And the idea is that, by the end, we have a final report and presentation and can bring it back to FEMA and say, we've done this work. We think there's a viable project here. I think that's something that has clear result of our work in the vision plan, and that we're very proud of.
Yeah, and I just want to say that we like, just to give Jordan credit, we took part in putting together the grant with information that we gained from the study and the modeling to really make a case for why this was needed. Oops, sorry.
So another thing, just wanted to briefly mention once again on the issue of stormwater. I don't think we can say that enough here. Just for additional background, there is a citywide stormwater study that's ongoing. This is work that the city initiated, after Hurricane Harvey in 2017. Folks that aren't familiar, incredibly powerful coastal storm. I think City of Houston had the equivalent of the amount of rain that goes over Niagara Falls, 15 days worth of that water in I want to say 48 to 72 hours. So incredibly powerful storm. The city is embarking on a citywide study to look at those impacts, what we expect to see, and potential mitigation. That work will be coming out later this year. That will validate some of the work we did specifically in East Harlem and help us move forward and come up with future solutions.
Yeah, and just to put a finer point on the fact that we did very high level long-term modeling for our study. The consultants had to make a lot of assumptions, but as part of this effort, DEP is actually mapping a lot of their sewers. And so this will be a much more detailed and accurate model. We do believe that it will validate what we see, and it will also refine, I think, the findings. And I think it will help DEP think much more broadly about their entire network, and not, they think about their system, whereas, we were focused more on this particular neighborhood as part of this study. So that will be, I think, really exciting to see that data come out. To move on a little bit more, thinking about engagement, which we think is really important as part of building resiliency long-term. I talked a little bit about our engagement with Dream Charter School, but it really did grow into something that was more than we had anticipated when we started the study. I really want to give credit to our partners at Star White House, who helped us with the study, where we developed a curriculum with the 9th graders, but also, taught them about, what does rain garden do? What does stormwater capture? But went as far as actually installing a rain garden within the Washington houses in the summer of 2019. So there's a photo here. The students also conducted a survey of tenants within the Washington houses and used that to develop emergency preparedness guide, really trying to understand, what are the concerns of residents, what are some resources. So that was, small scale, but definitely a way in which we're starting to engage youth with community members. It's something that we are also thinking about as a real model for resiliency planning and engagement throughout all of our efforts. Moving into more physical assets, from a parks perspective, if we think about creating resilient public spaces, we are really hoping to expand and continue the improvements that we've made and the types of interventions that we've done through the Community Parks Initiative. So folks here may be aware of the improvements that have been made to Playground 103, James Weldon Johnson, White Playground. A lot of those playgrounds not only look great and are fun to play in, but they also have a lot of stormwater function. We partnered with DEP at Playground 103 to construct 6 rain gardens and subsurface detention. So, not only is this a great resource for local residents and kids, but also, these parks are also playing a really important function in terms of our stormwater capture. So that's something that we want to continue to think about. These investments are ones that are made in neighborhoods that haven't seen a lot of investment. So this is a program that we want to continue to expand given the opportunity. The next one, we actually were just here last month talking about the project that Parks is working on with EDC for a new 7-acre park from East 125th to East 132nd Street. This is a really exciting new development, and the vision plan that we did for East Harlem has informed how we are approaching the design for the new park. So we are elevating it for sea level rise. We don't want to exacerbate the interior drainage conditions or create a bathtub, but we are elevating it approximately 2 feet. And I think we'll be back probably next month with some more information on design. So many folks who were here last month heard this already, but want to put this within the context of the resiliency planning and lessons that we learned. And Sheena had mentioned this already, and I know the Friends of East River Esplanade were also talking about this, but we're really excited about the $284 million investment. I want to make sure that folks know that resiliency planning is also going to be a key part of how we think about design. Again, we haven't started the design yet, don't yet have a schedule, but we are going to make sure that the resiliency goals and the priorities that we've identified here are going to continue to inform how the East River Esplanade repairs advance, and then also what is super exciting, the reconstruction of Pier 107. How do we create really functional public spaces along the waterfront and promote waterfront access while making sure that it's something that's resilient to sea level rise and future storms. So more to come on that. I'm sure it sounds like folks are very excited and will be very involved, but that is something that we're excited is advancing. I'm gonna hand it over to Jordan to speak to Metropolitan Hospital.
Perfect. And so won't belabor on this slide, and because I know that EDC came to the community board back in December to provide an update on this project. For those aren't familiar, this is Metropolitan Hospital and the effort to provide critical protection for that facility. It's a series of flood walls and deployable features. As well as you can see in those red lines, some public art, brought into that project. It's a $94 million project, and they expect to be in construction by the end of this year. Also, once again, won't spend too much time on this slide, and we also have our friends from city planning, I think, with us to go into any more detail if folks have questions. But I think it's critical for us to, when we talk about resiliency, it's not any one thing, and really it's about kind of all the tools we have at our disposal. One of those is zoning, and so for folks that know, after Hurricane Sandy, there was an emergency text amendment to help promote kind of smarter building in the wake of that event, and to fundamentally remove impediments for folks to kind of build in a smarter fashion. So I think on the most practical level, you can see in some of those images below, it's about, if there's a kind of a new construction, what are they doing in terms of kind of elevating the mechanicals, the raising yards, allowing kind of flood panels. In retrofits, when folks are doing kind of substantial renovation to their building, kind of removing any impediments and just making it as easy as possible. And then just learning over the course of the last several years what has worked and what hasn't, and to fundamentally rebuild in a smarter way and facilitate future recovery. But once again, I know some of our friends from city planning are on and can happily answer questions as well. So the last thing I'll mention, beating the drum here on kind of thinking about resiliency in a kind of multi-hazard, multi-dimensional way. One thing I wanted to highlight, I know many of you were probably intimately involved here, but the city launched the Get Cool NYC program this summer, which delivered 74,000 air conditioner units across New York City. The idea being, certainly, during COVID, we traditionally have relied on kind of cooling centers, but because of social distancing, that was a challenge, and so wanted to kind of bring some of these units to folks in need, elderly and kind of vulnerable. Within CB11, I think there was about 1,800 units delivered. And so I think that's a great success, and very proud of that program. Also wanted to mention that the Be a Buddy NYC program, once again, it's about providing social network, and being able to kind of provide cohesiveness and check on our neighbors. We've been lucky to partner with Union Settlement, and you can see here the impact of that program. Which once again has become much more very, very useful during COVID, when it's critical to kind of keep connected with our neighbors and make sure they're getting the services they need. So like I was saying, I think takeaways from our end is certainly that multi-hazard risk approach. That's critical. It's not just kind of coming up with a silver bullet solution to protect against coastal storms, but it's thinking about heat, about protecting our kind of critical facilities, thinking about stormwater and what interventions are possible. As mentioned at the top, we'll be back in communication with the board. Do want to get some additional material from that consultant deliverable out to the community, and I think that's critical to us. So appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Jordan and Alda. This is great to hear back from y'all on all of this really important work. All of these green and gray resiliency interventions are great and desperately needed in East Harlem, and we're looking forward to seeing how they unfold in our community. We have a couple questions, and then I'll open it up to the community board and then to the public members. And if elected officials, representatives have any questions or comments, please feel free. The first question I have is, can you more directly discuss the new mayoral funding and how this relates to the execution of the elements in the study? Should there be a concern with the execution of any planned work on the Esplanade without these resiliency efforts in mind? And how are these efforts intended to work in partnership? You're unmuted, Alda. You're still muted, Alda.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. So I may start, and then I think I may invite Sarah to jump in if there's anything I'm missing. Again, the planning for this has not yet started. The commissioner has committed to ensuring that planning and resiliency goals are part of the work here. I think, again, what we want to emphasize is that our approach is, making sure that Parks' assets in the waterfront are going to be adapted for sea level rise and what we know are the common risks. And sea level rise is happening. We're looking at the projections, like we're elevating the new park from 125th to 132nd by about 2 feet. I think we're also going to be looking at sea level rise here. I don't know what the design is going to look like yet. But I think in terms of interior drainage, that is definitely something that we're going to work with and really look to the leadership of DEP and DOT. As we had mentioned, DEP is in the process of wrapping up the study looking at interior drainage and stormwater flooding throughout the city. And I think that is really informing how they look at their assets. Again, they have more of a system, whereas I think for parks, we have more individual sites. And so there are ways in which we can say, yeah, we're going to elevate this one park, or, we're going to design it differently. Their approach is different, and I would have to defer to them on how they're approaching in stormwater flooding type issues. Sarah, if you have anything else to say about this particular.
Yeah, I think I think that was a great answer. I think I would add that with all of these projects, there's this very fine needle to thread between elevating and then, creating a different type of problem. As Alda was mentioning, there's that sort of bathtub effect. And so there's always the kind of the pros and cons of making sure you get that right level of elevating before creating a different type of issue.
Great, thank you. And as is completely obvious, everyone on this committee and the community board, all of our community partners, including Friends of the East River Esplanade, are incredibly not concerned, but would like to be involved throughout this process. So as much and as often as you can provide to us in terms of information to help us help you in making sure that it's what it needs to be for the community will be absolutely necessary.
Perfect. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions, so please just bear with me. And as we ask sort of tough questions, just please know that we're only trying to understand and help advocate for our community. We're not in any way trying to tear down your studies and the work that you're doing, which we all very much appreciate. For me personally, when you mentioned the projects on the Lower East Side, it's not about getting the same thing as Lower East Side. It's about dollar amount investments and levels of risk, not types of risk. So when billions of dollars are being invested and moving forward compared to small disparate projects in our neighborhood, it just seems that some neighborhoods are being protected right now while others are not. Can you just explain how those decisions are being made and who makes them?
I can start, or I don't know if you're, I mean.
Alda, go ahead and I'll jump in.
Yeah, sure. I think my only point is that I think a lot of, to date, a lot of the big resiliency projects that are capital projects are funded in reaction to disaster events like Sandy. So in Lower Manhattan, there was a lot of flooding from Sandy, and so it is more reactive. And that's how a lot of these projects start. There's a big chunk of federal investment. With the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project, HUD put in $335 million. I think there is, to give federal funding partners credit, I think there is a shift now to be more proactive about planning for risks and not just reacting to areas that have been devastated, not waiting till things are destroyed to build it back. But that is sort of the funding environment that we've been in to date.
That was honestly perfect, Alda. But you know, I think to you know put a finer point on one of those sources, you know, once again, yeah, the structure has been a kind of a reactive one, and you know, as part of our advocacy to the federal level, you know, we want a structure that gets out in front of these disasters. There was some recent reporting in the New York Times about a potential you know, opening up of what is called BRIC funding that is controlled by FEMA to you know, kind of similar to that project I described about the water square, to kind of open up eligibility kind of much more dramatic level. So, you know, obviously there's a new federal administration. I think their priorities differ fairly dramatically from the previous one. And so, you know, we're optimistic that there are opportunities ahead for us moving forward.
I would also add that I think one of the things that we did as part of the study is, and either Sarah or Karen may know a little bit more about the Army Corps, New York, New Jersey HATS. I forget what HATS stands for. Honestly, there are a lot of acronyms. But this stretch of East Harlem is something that they were looking at as part of a study that I think was paused around the time that we were, you know, wrapping up and developing a vision plan. But we did share some of the modeling that our consultants had done with the Army Corps. We tried to sit down with them because, you know, the Army Corps is another federal entity that does do a lot of the large infrastructure projects, like out in Staten Island and in the Rockaways. And so that is another venue that we had been actively pursuing, trying to inform, you know, how, if any type of large scale project might advance.
So that, yeah, that's the New York City harbor and tributary study, as mentioned, was paused. You know, we are advocating for it to be restarted. And so conversations are ongoing with the new administration.
Great, thank you. And that makes a lot of sense about reaction to events. And I think that, you know, we've all been hearing that had it been a couple hours of difference, that it would have impacted East Harlem at the, you know, a much greater level. And so I think that a shift to a more proactive process will be really helpful, especially in involving the community board and our constituents in that process. So are there any large scale resiliency measures taking place to protect the residents of East Harlem ongoing right now or planned for execution outside of the East River Esplanade improvements?
Not the same type of like neighborhood levy type project, if that's what you're asking for. That's not something that you know, has been funded or designed.
Okay. And just really quickly regarding the East River Esplanade, there was a publishing of the first version of Plan NYC in 2013 that stated East Harlem is at risk for flooding during extreme weather events. Subject to available funding, the city therefore will install an integrated flood protection system in East Harlem. The expected alignment will be along the FDR Esplanade between East 90th Street and East 127th Street, or could potentially follow the highway dividing wall. The goal is to complete design in 2014 with project completion by 2016. Could you just discuss why an integrated flood protection system for East Harlem is so far behind schedule, and why have other integrated flood protection systems moved forward, but the one for East Harlem has not?
So I'll jump in and please, folks from Parks, Carrie, others can layer on. So, you know, I think that was kind of an earlier idea. I think that was, you know, something that we did start to explore as part of the vision plan. I think, as kind of Alda made clear throughout the presentation, that alone, you know, if you built something like that and there wasn't requisite kind of, you know, we're talking giant scale drainage improvements, you would likely exacerbate the condition. You know, water would come in and have no way to get out. So, you know, I think that was you know, kind of an earlier iteration. as mentioned, I think this is something that we'd be happy to kind of discuss a little bit more in future sessions as we kind of show some of the material from the consultant deliverable. But I think the point there is that system alone wouldn't protect the community in a way we could get behind.
Great, thank you. And just to reiterate that it's not, as you said, like about any specific project, but I think East Harlem, as you've stated, is in need of large scale long-term solutions. So we just hope that our message is coming across in terms of equity investment. And I will, I see Xavier, our vice chair, has his hand up. I will go to him, and then I would like to open it up for George James to ask a few questions as well, our land use consultant. Xavier?
Thank you, Jessica. I would actually defer to George James, and then I will follow up if you don't mind.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, George.
Okay, great. All right, just a couple of points of information just so everybody's on the same page here. So for Community Board 11, I foiled the East Harlem Resiliency Study. And it was one of these things where when we look at the East Harlem Vision Plan, it's really small, right? It's 25 pages long, it's mostly pictures. And we knew that they spent $1 million on this, and it was just like apparent that there was something else that was done in this report. And I asked around, looked around, and we found evidence. Sam Schwartz talked about the East Harlem Resiliency Study on their website and called it one of the most comprehensive in the US to date, and proudly described some of their work and their solutions, which were really interesting and which are nowhere to be found in the vision plan. And so I guess one of my questions I'm going to have is to Jordan, who is talking about some sessions to talk about this. But, because it's draft, doesn't require the city to withhold the resiliency study, right? You can release it. There's no requirement that you redact it and keep it secret. So why don't you?
So it's an important question, and appreciate your advocacy on this issue. I think for us, we're not the city does not typically release kind of mid-session consultant deliverables before they are go through vetting through our city agencies. That's not kind of standard practice, and so it's important for us to give folks the kind of tools to advocate and move projects forward, as we've seen some of the things that we discussed in the latter half of the presentation. That said, transparency is important to us, and so want to find a way to get those materials in some form out to the community board, and that's what we've committed to. And so, happy to stand behind that.
Okay, so Jordan, I have to respond to that, because you are speaking to a New York City agency. Community board is a New York City agency, and you're saying, well, it has to go through, be vetted by the agencies. Well, this is one of them, and this is the agency with the charter mandated responsibility to assess the needs of this district.
I'm just going to jump. Sorry. Oh, continue.
And so why? I mean, so if this agency needs to assess the needs of the district, why aren't they involved in these discussions?
All right. Sorry for interrupting. I wanted to respond just from the perspective of Parks, since we were the entity that received the FOIL and we responded to it. We were the ones that issued the response to George. We followed, the standards and statutes, what we typically do for a FOIL process. And that is something that we as Jordan mentioned, this was a study process. The draft consultant deliverable, which you were seeking, was a part of the process. When we do visioning plans, and for folks who, it sounds like there are folks who are familiar with consultant processes, the consultants share with us ideas. And we don't want to limit their creativity, especially when we're addressing really big picture issues like climate change. We want to make sure that, you know, we're hearing from them, but we also have a responsibility to test and vet some of the really creative, perhaps pie in the sky ideas that we receive. And so there is a vetting process where we look at, okay, we have a responsibility to make sure that the ideas that are presented are things that actually match, for example, the types of infrastructure or the sewer network that we actually, our agencies who are responsible for that actually see or have within their assets. And that's an example of the types of things that, you know, when we compare the consultant report with our agencies, like, okay, is this something that is even doable within our street network, within our sewer network? We were finding that a lot of these ideas were not actually implementable. And so I think we made the call that, you know, for things that are not actually, that don't actually match the existing conditions or the climate risks that were modeled, it would be, I think, misleading to represent them without that additional context. So the draft consultant deliverable doesn't have that the process that we went through from 2018 through the end of 2019, where we really took a hard look at the ideas and made sure that, you know, what we present to the public is something that is verified and actually implementable. So I just wanted to add that as the agency that responded to the FOIL.
Yeah, that's fine, but this is not the public, right? This is a New York City agency with the responsibility for assessing the needs of the district. And you made decisions for this New York City agency on what's important and what's not. You even redacted the table of contents. We don't know what's in it at all, regardless of whether it was implementable or not. The table of contents is redacted. And, you know, I just, how seriously do you take the role of the community board in the district needs process and the capital planning process? And from this, it sounds like you don't take it very seriously at all. And I think that's a problem. I think that's I'll defer to our chair and chair of the committee and the vice chair that's here. But, you know, I think it's a problem because I think the work of the community board is really important. You need to have local people who are involved in these decisions. And these decisions are being made at a level listen, these decisions are being made, and very often the people on this community board don't even know, they don't have a seat at the table. They don't even know where the table is. The decisions are being made without any input from them. And that's a problem. I think that's a problem. And, you know, I appreciate, Jordan, what you said is that you're going to come back and start discussing some of these things. But, you know, the best thing to do would be to say, all right, well, here's the plan that we got from the consultants. We don't think that this is implementable or that's feasible, but then give it to us so that people can be informed, that the board can be informed.
Just to build off of that as we move forward and move along, you know, there's projects we see just like the Greenway presentation last month. It's that schematic design. That's not in any way close to a finished product. So, you know, I don't really see the difference between something that's early concept in terms of design versus something that, you know, we could have a conversation about or is marked up to help us understand what would be misleading or what's actually achievable in a report like that. So we look forward to continuing this conversation with you on how we can move forward together and how we can work together more proactively and with engagement so that we as a community board have time to reach out to our residents and to use our collective knowledge as volunteers and experts in different fields with different lived experiences to help inform these very large scale, very needed improvements to be made in our neighborhood. So I'll send it over to Xavier, our vice chair, and then I'll move over to the public questions before we move on.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, George. Look, I'm everything that's come out in the news and even prior with the full request. I'd like to be very candid. Before we can ask why, we have to know the how, and that's all we're asking for. And we are a city agency, and if you've had any stretch of reading the city charter, which before I joined the community board, I had in its entirety. It is a snooze fest, don't get me wrong. The fact of the matter is, for so many years, we have faced inequity, and we applaud the mayor. We applaud all the electeds involved in that, with the, I think, 284 million for the East River Esplanade and all the advocacy of all the community partners here. But I think with this particular matter, we are a city agency, and we're not coming at this from an angle of being antagonistic. We are partners in this process, but denying us and calling it an internal deliverable is really just carrying the same water that Robert Moses did when he enacted many of the agencies back in the day during the rise and fall of New York. And I hate to call that out, but that is really what this neighborhood and most of northern Manhattan, southern Bronx has been dealing with for decades. And we appreciate you coming here. And I think what will help us in advocating for our neighborhood, for our community, is being engaged in a respectful and holistic manner where you're able to say internally, this is where we are. It's not final. We're adults here. All of us are, and we can reason, and the transparency will carry more than its weight in gold for this community, seeing that, like, hey, we're a work in progress. They can understand that, and that will elicit respect, which is what this community cares about, because we did experience flooding here. It was bad. I have seen when on just 102nd by the viaduct in Park Avenue, where water is boiled up as the bathtub effect takes place. And I think what I would ask and implore of you is run it up the flagpole, speak to the higher ups and say, listen, we'd like to share this for review. It is a work in progress, and caveat that some of these things are not tenable. And we will carry as well as a work in progress, and then we can engage the constituency. We can be involved, and so we're not being reactive, but truly proactive, which is what we all care about. And that's the message I'm hearing from you being here. That's really where we are. So I ask, will you be willing to run this up, even if it has to go to the mayor's office, and say, hey, we want to be able to present this unredacted. It is a work in progress. It will be, that is the caveat. Please don't jump to conclusions. Don't be alarmist. We want to be holistic in our approach and working interagency so that we can actually find tenable long-term solutions for the health of this city. Otherwise, we might as well just envision the pier where my grandfather used to take my dad fishing, falling off into the river 50 years from now. So that's where we are. So that would be my humble request is, will you take that back and say, yes, we'd like this to be taken for consideration to present an unredacted form, say, and where you put citations, yes, we don't think this is tenable because of X, Y, and Z. And then we can actually do our research and our work, and we can come up to a pathway together.
Appreciate the question. A number of elements there, so we'll step through them. I think as it relates to the relationship with the community board, certainly see you as partners with this work. Certainly, a number of engagement sessions from 2017, 2018, 2019. Critical role in helping to develop this plan, to hear what works and what doesn't, and so that relationship means a lot to us. And I think that elements of your question overlap with what I heard from George at the end, and a commitment from us to share the core concepts and ideas from that consultant deliverable. And once again, I think there are elements of it which are not feasible, not practicable. And so, to your issue of kind of walking through that is a commitment. And, I think tying this together, maybe, I think really the investments that were announced earlier tonight mean so much. And in many ways, the study was kind of just a study and has been critical in kind of generating additional resiliency efforts. But it's about some of the capital commitments and the work parks will be doing at Pier 107 and the Esplanade to make sure that they're not just building back what was there before, but building back in a resilient manner. So appreciate kind of all those elements of your question.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure if Alda has anything to add to that before I respond.
No, I agree with what Jordan said. I have nothing to add to
that. Okay. So the one closing remark I would say is that in a equal partnership, which is what we should be, because as a city agency and as part of the charter, that having access to those studies in unredacted form that are funded by taxpayer dollars will further allow us to create a tenable pathway for health, well-being, and success long-term for our community. So if we can make that happen, I think you will have a wonderful relationship blossom going forward. So that's my recommendation. So let's see if we can make that happen.
We totally understand and are working to share information.
Okay, I look forward to hopefully seeing that unredacted form down the line. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. We have David ask a question.
Just very quickly, and we discussed it at our last meeting as well, as when parks made decisions about which parks to identify to make upgrades, particularly for the pitch of the soccer fields, without again consulting the community and coming to us and not knowing the impact that would have on existing programs in the community. So once again, it's not this one project that again we feel like again we're not always included in the brainstorming of the projects, and sometimes we see needs on the ground that you don't identify. So again, I think it's indicative that we must be included in this process. I thank George James who said it so eloquently, but again, this is like it's a repeat. And Parks is included in this project as well as the previous in deciding which playgrounds to, make upgrades to without the input of the community. So, and it's interesting, we put all this in our district needs, and it's like, when does that get addressed? Because that's when we say what we've identified those needs are. Most of the time it's we can't do this because of that, or can't do this. But you've done a lot of work here without including us in the process.
Great, thank you, David. We have one question from the public, Marie Winfield, and then we'll have to move on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make a comment, I guess a question about the RFP, just to push back a little bit on the idea that the integrated flood protection system was some sort of earlier iteration or idea in this process. The Parks Department RFP for this resiliency study certainly lists to study the feasibility of an integrated flood protection system, to create an open space plan incorporating an integrated flood protection system, to identify waterfront properties, to acquisition, to estimate required capital and other investment needed, and to develop an implementation plan. So I would imagine if a city agency put out an RFP that not only lists those type of categories for the consultants to complete, but also indicates in the RFP the same thing that's mirrored in the city article, that there was a flood risk, 6 hours, different. Coastal flooding is a very big, important part of looking at resiliency for the neighborhood. That is indicated in the Parks Department RFP. It seems a little bit odd that the agency itself would have $1 million and then disperse $1 million to get back a consultant report that only has unimplementable ideas. I can't possibly understand that. I don't understand how a city agency would work that way. So I hope that you can respond to that in terms of the status of the integrated flood protection system initiative, because I can't possibly think your initial response is correct. Thank you.
Alda or Jordan?
I can start, and then Jordan, you can jump in. So that is correct. We started off with what Jordan had said, you know, thought we were going to do an IFPS. The RFP did outline it. And as we started modeling the flood risks and working with our consultants, actually the nature of the study changed because we saw that the risk profile was different. When we started off with this project, the Parks was identified as the lead because we are, again, as I stated previously, the agency with the jurisdiction of most of the waterfront. We thought this was going to be a waterfront coastal focused type of planning study. And what our modeling showed was that the flood risk was very, very dire from an interior drainage perspective. And so I think one of the things that happened is that as we were modeling this and going through the process, we realized that the RFP that we had written, which assumed that we knew what the problem was actually not the case. And so we did have to pivot midway after we started seeing the results of the modeling. And that's why in our recommendations for the vision plan, and in all of our presentations and discussions, we really want to emphasize, you know, that managing stormwater perspective, because that was one of the big things that we learned when we started doing the study. And it wasn't until we really started delving into it with the consultant resources and the modeling that we began to really realize just how different the risks were here.
Thank you, Alda, and thank you, Marie. I'm going to pass it over to George for one more question, then we're moving on. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. And this is not a resiliency question. Alda, you talked about the new park from 125 to 132nd, and you used the word park. In the course of helping some folks on the Marx Brothers Playground, the city's law department has said that the open space from 125 to 132nd Street would not be parkland. It would be open space managed by the by Parks Department. Is that going to be parkland, or will it be open space managed by Parks?
I mean, I'm not aware of this. I manage the project. It's going to be. I guess you're asking for, is it going to be mapped parkland? Is that the question? Yes. I don't think that decision has been made, but I think, I guess I just don't know.
Okay, well, for the community board and this committee, the city law department has said emphatically in papers to the court that it is not parkland. Okay. It is open space managed by Parks.
We'll be able to get back to you on that topic.
Okay.
We'd have to talk internally to get clarity on that. Thanks for asking though.
No problem.
Yes, thank you, George, for all of your work and advocacy. We really appreciate all of the expertise that you bring to the table to help us as we move through these studies together. And thank you, Alda, Sarah, Jordan, all of your teams for coming to present about this really important topic. And we look forward to working with you, and we'll send you any follow-up questions via email. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, well, we will move on to the presentation or the community review of the preliminary budget. Carly, are you going to share your screen at all, or should we just talk? There we go. Awesome. Okay, I don't know if you want to introduce it at all, Carly, the process.
Sure. Yeah, so in late January, the mayor released his preliminary budget for fiscal year 2022. If you recall, in October, we submitted our requests. Parks, once again, has a large number of them. Congrats. And the committee or the community board is tasked with writing a statement on the preliminary budget where we review the responses to our requests, thank the mayor for that which he has funded, and further advocate for that which he has not decided to fund or that which is not recommended for funding. So yes, so that's a statement on the preliminary budget.
Great.
And if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask.
Great. So hopefully you all have had a chance to review these items. I think we had one of more than most committees on the board, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I think, you know, with the funding of the East River Esplanade and all of the great projects over there, thank you to the mayor. A few of our requests are being addressed within that. We'll need to get further clarity, I believe, from Parks on that to see what each of these is being addressed deliberately with that funding. A few things to think about. We mentioned that sanitation was a huge issue. I know we talked at full board with Ben Kalis, Councilmember Ben Kalis's office about the inequities across our district in sanitation services and allocated dollar amounts. So you'll see my disorderly notes on the far right side here, but just trying to get consensus from our committee members on what we want to prioritize. In my opinion, that sanitation, the sanitation elements, there's a couple different ones I think we can group together in a bucket. And then similarly, the street trees, gardener requests, and other park maintenance requests throughout the district to be addressed with the cut of seasonal workers, et cetera. So I just want to open it up to see if anyone has any thoughts on the process for any prioritization of items as we try to make our statement. If you have any comments, please raise your hand. Debbie, you're on mute if you're trying to speak. You're on mute. Go ahead, you're unmuted now, Debbie. Yeah, we can hear you. Oh, you just muted yourself again. You're still muted.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm sorry. Trying to multitask and not doing it well at all. What was the question was in terms of a priority?
Yeah, so we have all of the responses from our requests, and like I was saying, I think that a lot of the Esplanade elements we hope will be incorporated within the new funding, but trying to prioritize the remaining not funded requests and thinking I'm just suggesting that we might promote the sanitation concerns and general park maintenance and street tree concerns.
Right. Yeah, I support that, and you know, we had a brief conversation about the fence at Art Park. So at some point, I hope that becomes something for consideration.
Any other committee member input? And
I have a thought.
Go ahead, Connie.
The not funding seasonal workers in parks is basically unacceptable, in my opinion. It's unacceptable to parks as well. But we have to think about like where that funding is going to come from. So if the parks budget was cut, right? So what did they cut? They cut the seasonal workers and the maintenance staff. They did not cut, you know, upper management. They did not cut recreation. They did not cut all kinds of things. So, I mean, I don't know how we express this, but cutting the staff that parks' main job is to maintain parks, and that includes cleaning them. So if they're basically saying we're not going to have seasonal staff, that means our parks are going to be a mess next year. So I just think that's absolutely unacceptable. And they need to think about, they got funding cuts, they need to cut it somewhere else.
Thank you, Connie. Yes, I agree that cutting the people who make the real work happen on the ground is probably not the best solution. Are there any other comments regarding prioritization of these items?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The other thing was that, you know, in terms of supporting what Connie said about seasonal workers and about park usage, we know that once this quarantine is passed, that people are going to swarm to parks, and that's the framing that we probably should utilize in our stating our concern that now people are going to flock to open spaces, and what we want to do is be prepared in a way that supports cleanliness and supports staff and supports the infrastructure of parks, so that then programming can be supported in a way that aligns with that emerging need that's coming down.
Great. I see community board member John Green, our liaison, hand raised in the attendees. Go ahead, John. Is he on mute? Oh, there we go. Yes, I can hear you.
Good evening, everybody. John Green from Community Board 11. I'm on the Budget and District Needs Committee. As I said in the previous meeting last month, the thing is that, like you're talking about prioritization right now, the thing is that you're going to have to pretend that Bill de Blasio is Monty Hall and say, let's make a deal here. Because the thing is, because I know there are some things that you would like to have funded that you really passionate about, and the thing is that the mayor not so much. So the thing is that this is one of these things that you may have to decide what to prioritize and sometimes say, let's make a deal.
Completely agree, John. And yes, we already did receive, you know, a lot with the Esplanade funding, but I think it was heavily overdue in some cases. But I think there's room to still ask for things, especially when, like Councilmember Ben Kalos had mentioned at full board, that you know, the inequities across districts. So I think being able to point to those specific things and ask why might help our case there. And I agree with Connie and Debbie's comments about seasonal workers and why that's important to the community. Are there any other comments from the committee members? Especially if you haven't had any comments today or last month or the month before, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, Jessica. It's Wilfredo from Councilmember Kalos's office. Along with what you're saying, we absolutely think that you're on the right track. The money that was allotted for the Esplanade, that was money that has been promised for years. And I think that, you know, accepting it in the spirit that it's given is good, but you should definitely continue to fight for the inequities.
You're damn right.
In terms of the sanitation discrepancies, I've been talking with Nye Whitaker and with Carrie King and others who have emailed me. And one of the things that Councilmember Kalos thought that might be a good idea for us to do together is perhaps draft a letter. We can get, you know, Councilmember Kalos would sign on. We would offer, you know, the borough president and Councilmember Ayala's office to also sign on, as well as, you know, coming from the board to address, you know, this specific concern. Why is there such a discrepancy between the sanitation budgets when, you know, we're not talking about a massive difference in landscape or in geography between, you know, Community Board 8 and Community Board 11. So we are willing to help, you know, get that, get the letter done with the help of the board. If the board wants to draft a letter and wants us to sign on, we're happy to do so. But any way we can help elevate this, this point and bring it forward so that way the administration has to respond.
Thank you so much, Wilfredo. Carly, just curious about the process. I know our responses are due in a couple of days. Is that correct? And then what would be the process if we wanted to move forward with a letter? What's the earliest we could do that?
So our statement is due on we're voting in it on the full board, and that's the deadline. That's why we moved the board meeting up. And I think that it's even worth mentioning it in the statement on the preliminary budget, but I also think that what Wilfredo is suggesting is also a great idea and can kind of further press the mayor's office and pressure him to give a response, pressure the office to give a response. And I think that as long as it's before the executive budget, I think it should be drafted and voted on and as soon as we possibly can, so that as they are having these discussions about the executive budget, they have this letter from us on hand already and they know where we stand. But so if you wanted to do it for March, I think that would be fine too. I don't think it necessarily needs to come out of February.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was just concerned with the, I know we had talked about how things need to be drafted before we vote on them. So I think, if anyone would like to assist with that, that letter drafting, I think that's something Carly and I will be working on for the month of March. For us, does everyone agree that it's worth pursuing for March for a resolution?
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay. I see Jada's comments in the chat agreeing about prioritizing sanitation, more trash cans, and increasing trash collection frequency. So if everyone agrees, I think, let's see, we're looking at, let's see, I'm going down the list here. Item 5, provide new or upgrade existing sanitation garages. The sanitation garage goes hand in hand, I think, with the sanitation concerns. So that one, the funding to allocate to provide more street big belly trash cans. The funding to increase the frequency of litter basket collection along major corridors, and the vacant lots becoming illegal dumping sites to increase vacant lot cleaning and discourage illegal dumping. Those 4, I believe, are within the sanitation bucket. Any comments on that bucket before I move to the parks bucket? Okay, so then for parks, let's see, we've got the restore full funding for the seasonal budget for parks and rec. Parks need to be cleaned and maintained more frequently. So there's 1, 2, the gardeners servicing Community District 11. We need additional permanent gardeners. And then 3, the last one, in order to help mitigate the impacts of climate change, East Harlem needs more trees to absorb carbon. Funding should be allocated to plant new trees. So there's 4 within the sanitation bucket and 3 within the parks and maintenance bucket. Does that sound acceptable to everyone, or are there any comments on those buckets?
So the Parks does seasonal gardeners as well as full-time gardeners.
Yeah.
And it actually makes sense because you can't garden in the winter. So the seasonal gardeners come in for, I guess April or May through November. And that's not a huge expense item. You know, that's because it's an annual item, not a multi-year item. It's not a permanent position. So that goes back to seasonal staff is what really maintains parks. You know, you have a handful of full-time gardeners throughout the park system, but the seasonal staff, which is sometimes new staff every single year, sometimes it's, you know, people from the year before. I think we should really push for a seasonal gardener. The truth of the matter is that we have so many playgrounds in East Harlem, which don't require a tremendous amount of gardening, but we really only have 2 full-size parks that require full-time permanent gardeners. So I think we should push for a seasonal gardener, because then he can work with both gardeners and do the, you know, really sort of he can do the entire district and not just be in one particular park.
Thank you, Connie, for your expertise on this matter. It's very helpful. Are there any other comments? So we can prioritize the seasonal staff of the parks bucket. And then do we want to prioritize the sanitation garage with the trash collection? Keep pushing that.
Don't give anything in that sanitation, because it's been as long as I've been on this,
Yeah,
as
man.
Debbie's been on this board, so don't let it go. Keep it right forefront, because that's what they want to do.
Yep.
You know, Metropolitan was behind it till they moved it from 199th Street. Now they don't care anymore because it's not in their backyard.
Great. Thank you, David, for reminding us of the legacy of the sanitation garage.
I was on Medcab too when we fought that battle. So
Yeah. Great. Xavier?
Yeah, real quick, and thank you, John, for raising your points. I think beyond what was raised by Will, we have an opportunity now where our council members are most activated in the budget process. So and I sit on the budget committee, when you prioritize everything and our response, just make sure you're hyper-focused, as well as consolidating all the information from previous positions past and whether everything has been reconciled, or in other words, delivered. Just for example, as we've seen with East River Esplanade, now that's going to start slowly shifting into it's being accomplished, but we got to track. So just at this part of the process. And also I would remind everyone, if there are issues that are coming up that are within your purview, please note them for future asks as well, because that's something oftentimes we are, as volunteers, we're often being reactive, or we're relying on instantaneous information, and we should always make sure that we're keeping a log of all those issues that are pertinent to the community and may be on a second or tertiary tier, but is definitely relevant and of need for the community, that we register that in these conversations, even though this is what's most immediate in our process.
Thank you, Xavier.
Thank you.
Let's see.
I was just about to say, just, you know, at some point, think about the fence at Art Park.
Yep. And I think our, you know, traditionally we just have been leaving things that still need to be addressed year to year, which is not obviously a very productive solution, but is a way for us to create a timeline where we can say we've been asking for this for, you know, X years, and that hopefully it's addressed. But we will continue to keep that on the list and you know, I guess revisit it. I'm not sure we're going to get everything that we've asked for at this time.
It'll just, things rise to the top because other things shift over, you know. So I'm just grateful that it's in the list, and I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Debbie. Are there any other comments before we move on with that direction? These 2 buckets and the couple items within each that we're going to prioritize, and a pending forthcoming resolution regarding sanitation in partnership with Councilmember Van Kalos's office. All right, we'll do that. All right, Carly, we can move forward unless you have anything else to add.
No, this was great. Thank you all.
So last month we talked about committee goals and accomplishments from last year. So I'm just going through my emails trying to remind myself. Here we are. Okay. So we had one-on-one conversations, Malik and I, with almost every committee member. We missed out on Francis, David, and Jada, I believe. So there's still time to contribute. And if you want to meet with us one-on-one, we still would love to do that. So let us know when you're available. The summary.
They belong in the principal's office.
So Malik, yeah, feel free to chime in with any comments on what we heard from the committee member check-ins. But from what I heard, and from just trying to summarize, the 2020 accomplishments we're kind of putting into 3 buckets. So again, we're going back to buckets. Sorry, we're in the resiliency track here. The first was we heard a lot that producing tangible results was something that was important to be considered an accomplishment. And as we know, a lot of things that we are doing are over the course of a long span of time, and not much is able to be tangibly constructed or wrapped up with a ribbon cutting in a year. So I think one of the accomplishments was producing letters of supports that aided in a tangible result, like the extension of the El Barrio bait station, which was longlisted for a Dezeen Award. So I think that's one example of a tangible result. The second was progressing forward long-term community initiatives through committee actions and advocacy, like the East River Esplanade. So things that didn't necessarily create a tangible result, but still pushed the needle forward in a really important way. And then the third was engagement and building relationships with our neighboring community boards, city agencies, community-based organizations, and nonprofits. Malik, do you have any comments on those 3 accomplishments or anything to add?
No, not really. I just really wanted to appreciate everyone giving their time and effort. For those who we haven't had our one-on-one yet, hopefully we'll do it in the near future. And the biggest thing I feel like that I know that we will achieve this upcoming year, hopefully during the spring and summer, is trying to visit as many parks as we can throughout our district. And I'm really looking forward to that, especially doing it with my community leaders here.
Yeah,
That's
so
it.
true. Yeah, and I think we heard from everyone about what parks they might like to sort of lead a tour through, and we're working on grouping parks and creating an itinerary for that when it gets warmer. So definitely look forward to that. And I think it'll be really helpful for us in terms of our collective knowledge to share what we all know about each park, and to help us make better decisions as a committee. So that'll be really fun. That's something we're going to do this year. So as I say that, thinking about the 2021 goals, that's something Malik and I thought was really important. So we just want to do a quick survey that I want to say thank you to Carly for putting together my not quick enough responses to be included in this survey. So we're going to just sort of list out the 10 items that were recurring themes in our conversations with individual community board members, so that we can all align together in selecting our top 3 for 2021.
Great.
I'm gonna say this before you. I'm sorry, Carly, but David, my counterpart Jessica was very, very jealous that Carly set this up for the Youth Education Committee, and we did not have an opportunity to do it here. So we're doing it here in honor of the Youth and Education Committee. And thank you, Carly, for this lovely thing that we're doing right now.
No problem. And I do just want to defend myself here. And I said this to Jessica. The reason why we did it at youth was because we began having this conversation about goals and accomplishments in December. So it's kind of like a 2-month sort of journey here. But so I do want to just say on a more serious note. So I'm about to launch the poll, and it's going to pop up on everybody's screen, including attendees. But while we love to hear feedback about just feedback in general from the public, from representatives, this poll is only intended for the panelists. So even though it's going to pop up on your screen, I'm going to ask you to sit out on this one. And if you do have any recommendations, you can reach out to us separately. I'm going to launch it now.
Oh man, I'm nervous.
So yeah, you're going to want to select 3.
Nothing popped up. I didn't see anything yet. Did it pop up yet for you?
Oh, it didn't pop up?
It did for me.
I have it, I'm filling it out.
Oh, I don't, let me see. Oh, I see it. No, I see it. Sorry.
We have 11 members on this committee, so we should have 11 responses.
I just submitted mine.
All right, mine's in.
I always have the pleasure of watching the results come in as they're happening. So in real time, you get to see your decisions. It's fun.
And I think there are many that overlap. So I don't think in saying that we're going to prioritize one over the other means that we're not going to do the tangential options.
It's funny, I was feeling that same way, Jessica, when I was looking at them, how we combine. And I think, we also in youth will have some overlap in a similar kind of way. And we're going to work through some of those next week too. So similar process. But we got a process now. Before we didn't have a process. It was hook or crook.
Progress.
Francis was both the hook and the crook and getting them all on it.
Okay, we're waiting on one more person.
And that was very nerve-wracking to make those choices.
It was.
Oh.
Like I told our committee too, just because we may prioritize doesn't mean things are not worked on. They come up in the community and then they become a priority. So.
Okay, so it says 11 of you voted. Did everybody on the committee vote?
Yes.
If you didn't, speak now. Or forever hold your peace. All right.
I'm sorry, guys. Francis.
Yes.
I need to talk to you after the meeting. You're very hard to reach. I can only catch you at meetings.
So true.
Oh, you're gonna have to take one on the phone. Okay, so I'm gonna share the results. And here we are. So it looks like the number 1 is the East River Esplanade with 7 votes. Number 2 is the Richard Toussaint Park.
Yes. Be my tie.
Those do have to be the priorities. I mean, top names. Those are the real big ones for this committee.
I agree.
And then we have a tie for number 3. And one of them is advocate for park upgrades. And then the other one is aligning priorities and strategic thinking to accomplish things with the end goal in mind. I'm wondering if there's a way to combine them.
Combine it because one is the outcome and one is the process.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you could say advocating for upgrades, and then the process is, you know, how you're going to get that done. So you don't really have to have the aligning of priorities, because you can say that in your advocating for park upgrades, for example, you put park, you know,
I would just frame it like this, Debbie, in following up your thought. Aligning our priorities and strategic thinking apply to all of these things and how we approach them.
Right, yeah. So it's
Right.
a process.
So-
Right, that's a process.
Yeah, so, you know, again, I looked at that one and I moved away from it because I think ultimately that's what we do in all these things anyway, so.
I just think that when you say having an end goal in mind, you could just say, you know, advocate for park upgrades with an end goal in mind. You know what I
No,
mean?
East River Esplanade and Richard Toussaint is our end goals in mind right now, because those have been long, you know. I mean,
Yeah,
Esplanade
absolutely.
is, we need, right?
Yeah.
And Richard Toussaint, like, all of us will die off the board if we don't get this done, and then
Well,
nobody will know about it.
that's gonna happen come hell or high water.
All right.
That's hell or high water. That is going to happen because you know what, we could even make it a damn campaign issue. You know,
Yeah.
for anybody that's running, what are you gonna do about this park?
All right, so we're hearing that obviously the East River Esplanade and Richard Toussaint Parkway, Pathway and Park, they're kind of together. They're both high priorities, so we'll go with that as number one, right? For number two, we'll go ahead and put the advocating for park upgrades. Should we say upgrades / maintenance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then let's see. How do we feel? You know, I think that the aligning priorities, like, it is a process, but I think it's also a goal. So I think that's a fair one to put as our third goal, and not just, you know, say that we're going to do everything with that in mind.
Right, and then in terms of activating nonprofits and things like that, that can go towards programming. That could be, you know, and what is it? Oh my God, outcome goal. You know.
Right. So
Product.
I just want to open it up. Diane, Jada, Russell, Michelle, just if you have any comments, I'd love to hear. All right. Great. So we'll just go with the top three. I feel like that's fair. And we'll keep everything else obviously on the agenda. So nothing's going to fall by the wayside as long as we accomplish things with the end goal in mind. So keep moving all of these things forward. And I thank everyone for participating in this, for Carly for creating this for us, and you know, everyone for everything that you're doing. You know, obviously I say this every time, but it's really Jada is asking, knowing that the Esplanade has been funded, what's left to accomplish with that? I think that's a good question, and I think, as we've mentioned across you know, the presentations with the resiliency, that the funding is just one step, and that
Right.
carrying that through to action as we
You have to sit on top of it.
Yeah, go ahead, Francis. Do you want to talk about why it's important? Oh, press mute one more time. Press mute one more time. Can you press mute one more time? There you go. You're off mute. Don't press anything. Oh, you press it again. Okay, now don't say anything. Oh, no. Okay.
I think we know what she means.
Yeah, we know what she's saying.
You know, we know what she means.
But basically, Jada,
Let me
it's
answer
important to see it
question.
Yeah, let's let Diane speak and then we'll go to Malik.
Jada, yeah, it's funded, but the question is whether or not it's in the actual budget. Is it within the capital tracker? How long will it take? Will it, obviously, it may be in your lifetime more than it is the rest of us on this call. And that being said, we got to make sure that you carry the torch to make it happen. And so, yes, funding is one thing, but what is 284 million today may turn out to be in 5 years from now, you need closer to 300 million. So those are the things. That's why it's important. We need to find out the tracker and who's funding it and how long are they projecting it's going to take. Does that help?
That's already come up before, where they were going to fund an area and then the price when they were going to do the work was so much more expensive that they couldn't complete the whole project and they spaced it out. So I think those are the things why these things become so, to keep on the burn and just keep fighting it. It's like we got to periodically fight it and advocate every now and then.
And just, you know, the person that talked about like Earth Day as our, you know, high holy day, that's something that we could talk about next year. You know, it's something that it's like our annual whatever, you know, so that doesn't have to be a priority. It could be a project, you know, to bring together what we're doing. So it's, you know, it's process and then there's priority and then policy, you know. So if we think of 3 Ps, that'll be good.
Hey, Francis, don't move and say what you're going to say because you're unmuted right now. Don't move. Don't press anything. Say what you're going to say.
Listen, we have to watch over these things.
Oh.
Because priorities change. When they put things out for bid, we lose or they forfeit what they promised to do. We have to watch over it. I can't enthusiastically endorse watching over it day after day after day, line by line. I've seen priorities go to pot because nobody watched over them, such as the East River Esplanade stabilization and reconstruction on page 2. It was supposed to be finished in 2020. It's not finished yet. It's not even started.
Thank you, Francis.
Jessica, we do have a next step with the East River Esplanade. And we should do this and copy the Friends of the East River Esplanade. We should put in a request for a timeline. That's the first step. Until they have a timeline, they're not going to do or answer anything. So if we request a timeline, it'll be very basic. They're going to tell us when the design process will begin. And honestly, that design process won't even probably start for a year. So let's get a timeline because then we can hold them to the timeline.
Work plan.
Great. Thank you all for your input. Diane, did you have a question? You're on mute.
I do. If you look at the actual funding, it looks like they're skipping over 107 to 117th Street. Do we have any answers as to why it looks like that?
Could you just repeat the streets that that it's skipping over again?
107, 108 to about 118th Street.
Okay. Yeah.
If you go back to the resiliency proposal, even they had it written down. So, and I think Stacy asked a question about it.
Yes, I just saw it in the chat.
108 to 117 was not on the slide. They had below and above it on the slide for the East River Esplanade project. So
everything we have seen, they seem to not include that area. I'm just asking, can we double check that so that we can make sure that if it isn't happening, why? I mean, then it's not contiguous. Then it's, we get up to 107th Street, you gotta walk around and get back on. Am I making sense?
Yes. Yeah. And we will follow up with Parks to get a response on that.
I mean, it could be like
asked in the chat, but Alda didn't reply. So Stacy did ask it.
Yeah, I saw, and I'm sorry, Stacy, for not raising your question during the question and answer. Yeah, so Yeah, we'll reach out to Parks with that question and see what their response is and send an email to the full team. And I'll make sure to extend that to you at Friends of the East or Esplanade. Stacy, thank you for staying on.
You know, that's probably as simple as when she made that slide presentation was before the funding was announced.
Yeah, it could be anything.
Actually, when I don't know if I'm allowed to speak protocol wise, but yeah, is it okay?
Yes, it's okay.
When Diana Ayala tweeted out the announcement, she had the same bit. She had like the two pieces, and then there was this missing chunk, and then the third piece was the pier. In Diana Ayala's tweet, there was also $10 million not allocated, and so I wondered at the time if maybe that was supposed to go for there or not, and so I was hoping Alda could answer it tonight, but it got breezed over. So yeah, that would be great to just find out, you know, really what is it. It's an odd thing because it also includes the currently blocked off 114th to 117th. So that of all the spots, that's the one that probably needs to be fixed first. And then anyway, so thanks for letting me talk.
Thank you, Stacy. Great. So we'll reach out and get answers on that, and I'll hopefully have an answer for everyone by full board. If we could move forward, Carly, I know we have a couple announcements that are not really announcements anymore. Oh, we have one that is an announcement. Go ahead.
No, I removed the Esplanade announcement. Like 5 different people were gonna make it.
All right, do you want to, or is this Connie's announcement?
It's not, but I'm happy to make it.
Okay, just say it.
All right, the public comment period, Department of Park and Recreation's proposed rule read the elimination of membership fees for young adults is now open through February 22nd, 2021. Connie, I don't know if you would like to just speak to this at all based on our conversations.
So currently young adults, I think 14 to 18, essentially have to pay as much as an adult to become a member of a recreation center. So waiving the fee and making it free would really make it possible for so many more young people to use the centers, but not even just use the equipment and all that stuff in the programming. They'd have access to the bathrooms. You know, there's bathrooms in every rec center that none of us have access to unless we have a membership. So, you know, I just think this is a no-brainer. We really should push for this. I think the fact that Parks is even thinking about it means they want to do it. So we should enthusiastically support it.
David, I'll come to you in a second. I saw Malik had his hand up first. Malik, do you still have a question?
No, I didn't have a question. I just thought it was announcements, but go ahead.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, I'll come back to you for an announcement. Yeah. Okay. David, go ahead.
I'm wondering why they would only keep it open through February. If there's something they really want to do, why wouldn't it just be open all the time for registration for youth? Because then what are you doing? You're giving whoever can get into that right away quick and then nobody else, right?
I think there's a misunderstanding.
So like it says, it's now open through February 22nd. So we're talking about 18 days you can, no.
No, it's just a proposed rule, right, Connie?
It's a proposed change to the existing structure.
So this is where we can make comments during this period.
Yeah.
Okay.
We also have this on our youth and education agenda too.
Oh, great.
Yeah, because it overlaps. I mean, yes, it's a part, but we talk a lot in youth and education about after school programming and you know, keeping our youth busy, and this and reducing the fee to $0 will kind of open, you know, provide youth with more opportunity to.
At the moment, there are no young people in the rec centers. And by young people, I mean teenagers. And, you know, you're always like, even people at the rec center have said to me, how do we get young people in here? They're not going to go. They're not going to pay $100 and something a year to be a member. So it should have always been free for people under 18, in my opinion. It is free for children on 13 and under.
Diane?
So, two things, and I'm sure everyone has seen. If you haven't seen it, you will see it. That Gail made an announcement about this open cultural program. It's for organizations, artistic organization, and artists to like do outdoor activities for art activities, rehearsals, and all those things associated with, I guess, being an artist and doing it in the street on designated blocks. We do have 104th Street, 103rd, there's a list, there's 24 locations, but there is 0 above 116th Street. 0.
Of course.
So I think we need to start, and I bring it up because even though it's not, it's DOT, but it's still part of, parks and recreations and all those things that we want our young people to be on the outside, as well as our artists. And I think we should advocate, start the push to get something up here above 116th Street. We got a very short window, but I think I wanted to bring it to the committee's attention because one of the things that Uptown Grand Central will be doing next is to get the Great Day sign up on 126th Street. And this might be a way that we could do something, but I'll keep you posted on that because as we know, everything had been delayed because of the COVID.
Thank you, Diane. And just to circle back, just if you have any comments on how we could comment on that.
Well, I'm going to ask Carrie to send in a recommendation about the Great Day block, which is on 26th Street and between 5th and Madison, so that we can have something there because it is an iconic picture and rightfully so. CB11 and East Harlem should be recognized for actually making that happen and recognizing him with the name Art Kane, Harlem, 1958. I also would suggest that anybody on this call know of any street that should be closed above 116th Street, contact Angel or Carly and say, listen, send this over to Gail. Debbie, you might want to think about it for Art in the Park.
Okay, this is my official request, please.
Right. So, Connie, you could probably think about it for Marcus Garvey around, those several blocks.
Yeah, and actually we can't. We went through this last year, and so these closed streets require an organization with a staff to manage it. The Alliance doesn't have a staff, and also the streets that go around Marcus Garvey Park are difficult to close. 120th between the park and Lenox is one of the closed streets, but when you get around the park itself, there's buses, there's all kinds of things. So they're really not eligible for closing.
So, what I would say is some of us who've been on the board a little longer than, of course, our new kids on the block, I think we all understand that if you don't submit, you don't get. And so I strongly recommend if you have anything submitted to Angel, at least we submit. As Francis said, priorities, priority. You can't, if you don't speak, they won't do. So hopefully you'll see it when you get home or when you get a chance to look at your mail. Gail sent something out in her newsletter. So I thought it was important to mention that.
Great. Thank you, Diane. So if anyone wants to make any recommendations to submit to Angel, and thank you, Diane, for bringing that up. And then I just wanted to circle back with Connie regarding the proposed rule and public comment period. Where would we go to make a public comment?
So I sent you the Gotham to Go post because Park sent it to Lynn so that she could send it out there. There's the link in there where you can click on the link and then you can comment. I've already commented on it. Anyone can come. You can even comment more than once.
Great. Okay, so we'll look for that link and send it out to the rest of the committee. Thank you, Connie. And sorry that I'm getting a little jumbled here. And I wanted to bring it back to Malik because I skipped over you. So go ahead, Malik.
No, it's okay. Thank you. It's just, mine's just short and sweet. It's just a quick reminder that February 25th, we're celebrating my father's 80th birthday.
Oh my God.
Via Zoom, and hopefully we can have as many club members, community board members as possible. He served on this board for 30 years. And he actually was chair of this Parks Committee. So it would, I would love for, as many of you as many of y'all as possible to join. And Francis, I need to talk to you because I want you to present to talk. So I need to have this conversation with you after this meeting, Francis.
Awesome.
Francis, give him a call.
I'll give you a call.
Thank you, Francis. And thank you, Malik. I personally already RSVP'd, so I'll see you there. Thanks for spreading the word. And I thought I missed it actually, so I'm glad that I didn't. I thought it was last month.
February 25th. February 25th.
Awesome. All right. Any
I'll
other
put the information in the chat.
Great. Thank you so much. Any other announcements? I think that's it.
I'm good. 80. Oh my God, 80.
All right. Thanks everyone for everything. And I'll adjourn the meeting. Oh, Jada, go ahead. Jada, did you raise your hand? Oh, no, she didn't. Well, we love you, Jada. All right. This meeting is adjourned at 9:20. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.